Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Library. Tonight, we are wandering into the gentle rhythms of nature, where life moves in quiet waves across the centuries. This is a journey through patterns and colors, through tiny shifts that accumulate like grains of sand until mountains are built. We will explore how the living world adjusts, how creatures find harmony with their homes, and how beauty emerges from the slow dance of time and place. The story ahead is not about conflict or struggle, but about balance. It is about the elegant ways that living things respond to their surroundings, generation after generation, creating the remarkable variety of forms we see today. From the shimmer of butterfly wings to the peaceful progression of forests through time, nature follows patterns that are both logical and wondrous. If these calm reflections help you rest, I invite you to like and subscribe to the Sleepy Library. It helps others discover these quiet journeys, one peaceful soul at a time. But for now, simply breathe. Let the day settle behind you. Allow your thoughts to soften like evening light. Let us begin. Some animals blend so perfectly with their homes that they seem to disappear. Throughout nature, countless creatures have developed colors and patterns that allow them to match their surroundings with astonishing precision. This harmony between animal and environment happens gradually, over many generations, as those individuals who blend in just a little better tend to survive more often and pass along their traits. A moth resting on tree bark may display patterns that mirror the texture and color of that bark so closely that even a searching bird might overlook it. The walking stick insect extends its body in perfect imitation of a twig, swaying gently when wind moves through branches, completing the illusion. These are not conscious choices or tricks, but the result of countless small changes refined over time. In forests, the dappled light creates shifting patterns of shadow and brightness. Many animals carry spotted or mottled patterns that break up their outline in these environments. A fawn lying still in undergrowth wears spots that mimic sunlight filtering through leaves. The patterns do not hide the fawn completely, but they make its shape harder to recognize at a glance. Over generations, those fawns with patterns that worked best in their particular forest tended to thrive, and their descendants inherited similar markings. The process is gentle and gradual, like water shaping stone. Some creatures have markings that resemble something entirely different from what they are. Certain butterflies carry large circular patterns on their wings that look remarkably like eyes. These eye spots can startle a bird that expects to encounter a small insect, but instead sees what appears to be the face of something much larger. The butterfly itself does not know this trick is happening. The pattern simply exists because, over many generations, butterflies with more prominent eye spots were slightly more likely to survive encounters with hungry birds, and their wing patterns became more common in the population. Arctic animals often wear coats that change with the seasons. The Arctic fox grows thick, white fur in winter, blending seamlessly with snow and ice. When spring arrives and the landscape transforms to brown and grey, the fox molts and replaces its winter coat with darker fur. This seasonal change happens automatically, triggered by the length of daylight. The adaptation allows the fox to remain concealed year-round in an environment that undergoes dramatic seasonal shifts. The ability to change color with the seasons emerged gradually, as those foxes whose coats matched their surroundings in different seasons had better success in both finding food and avoiding danger. Beneath the ocean's surface, many fish have developed a form of coloration called countershading. Their backs are darker, matching the deep water when viewed from above. Their bellies are pale, matching the bright surface when viewed from below. This simple gradient of color makes the fish less visible from multiple angles. A predator looking down sees a dark shape that blends with the depths. A predator looking up sees a pale shape that blends with the light. This elegant solution to the problem of being visible in open water has appeared independently in many different groups of ocean animals, from tiny fish to enormous sharks. The praying mantis sits motionless on a leaf, and in its stillness it becomes part of the plant. Some species are green like fresh leaves, others brown like dead ones, and a few even have shapes and textures that mimic flowers. These insects do not choose their colors or patterns. They are born with them, inherited from parents who also carried effective camouflage. Over time, as individual mantises with better camouflage tended to catch more prey and avoid more predators, the population as a whole shifted toward more refined resemblance to plants. Deep in tropical forests, some insects have evolved to look like leaves in extraordinary detail. The leaf-tailed gecko of Madagascar has a tail that is flattened and shaped like a dead leaf, complete with veins and irregular edges that suggest partial decay. The gecko's body is mottled with earthy colors, and its skin has a texture that catches light the way tree bark does. When it presses itself flat against a branch during the day, it becomes nearly impossible to distinguish from the surface it rests upon. This remarkable resemblance developed gradually over countless generations, as small improvements in shape, color, and behavior combined to create an almost perfect illusion. Many sea creatures can change their appearance within moments. The cuttlefish, a relative of the octopus, has specialized cells in its skin called chromatophores. By expanding or contracting these cells, the cuttlefish can alter its color and pattern with remarkable speed. It can shift from sandy brown to match the seafloor, then moments later display rippling bands of color, then transform again to resemble seaweed. This ability allows the animal to match many different backgrounds throughout its life. The capacity for rapid color change is itself an adaptation that emerged over time, as animals with more flexible and responsive skin had greater success in both hunting and hiding. In the deserts, lizards often wear colors that echo the sands and rocks around them. A lizard living on red sandstone tends to be reddish, while one living on pale sand tends to be pale. When researchers study populations of the same species living in different areas, they find that the local color variations match the local ground colors with precision. This is not because the lizards change color to match their home, but because in each location, those individuals who happen to be closer to the background color were more likely to survive. And over many generations, each population shifted toward its local optimum. Some animals use disruptive coloration, patterns that break up the outline of their body. Stripes, spots, and patches of contrasting color can make it difficult for a predator to perceive where one part of an animal ends and another begins. A zebra's stripes do not make the animal invisible, but when a herd moves together, the stripes of multiple animals overlap and blend in ways that make it harder for a predator to focus on a single individual. The tiger's stripes serve a similar purpose, especially in the dappled light of tall grass and undergrowth, where the bold patterns help dissolve the recognizable shape of a large cat. In some cases, animals have evolved to resemble not just their background, but specific objects in their environment. The stonefish looks almost exactly like a rock encrusted with algae and coral. It lies motionless on the seafloor, waiting for prey to swim close. Its resemblance to an inanimate object is so complete that even careful observers can overlook it. This strategy, called masquerade, allows the fish both to avoid being noticed by larger predators and to remain undetected by the smaller fish it hunts. The stonefish does not attempt to look like a rock. It simply is shaped and colored in a way that happens to create that resemblance, a pattern that has been refined over countless generations. Many caterpillars are masters of blending in with the plants they eat. Some are green and smooth like fresh leaves. Others are brown and textured like twigs. A few have bumps and irregular shapes that make them look like bird droppings, an appearance that most predators find uninteresting. These varied forms all serve the same purpose, allowing the caterpillar to feed without being easily spotted. The specific appearance of each species reflects the particular plants it lives on and the particular predators it must avoid. In coral reefs, some fish have evolved colors, patterns that allow them to blend with the complex, colorful environment. The scorpionfish is covered in frilly appendages and mottled colors that make it look like a piece of living coral or a clump of algae. It sits perfectly still, waiting for smaller fish to venture close. The resemblance is so effective that even experienced divers often swim past without noticing the predator. This form of camouflage works not by hiding, but by making the fish look like just another part of the reef's intricate landscape. Some creatures have patterns that serve multiple purposes. The spots on a fawn provide camouflage while young, but fade as the deer matures and becomes too large to hide effectively. The changing pattern reflects changing needs at different life stages. Similarly, many birds have dull, camouflaged plumage when young and vulnerable, but develop brighter colors as adults. These shifts in appearance happen automatically as part of growth and development, timed to match the changing requirements of survival. Certain grasshoppers can be either green or brown, depending on the environment where they develop. If a young grasshopper grows up surrounded by green plants, it tends to develop green coloration. If it grows up among dry, brown vegetation, it tends to develop brown coloration. This flexibility allows a single species to thrive in varied environments. The ability to adjust color based on surroundings is itself an adaptation, one that has emerged gradually as those grasshoppers with more responsive development had success across different habitats. The chameleon is famous for changing colors, though the popular image of the chameleon perfectly matching any background is somewhat exaggerated. Chameleons do change color, but primarily in response to temperature, light, and social signals rather than as deliberate camouflage. A chameleon may darken to absorb more heat or brighten to reflect heat. It may display vivid colors when encountering another chameleon. The color changes do provide some benefit in blending with surroundings, but they serve many other functions as well. The capacity for color change in chameleons represents a complex adaptation that serves multiple needs simultaneously. In the Arctic tundra, many birds and mammals turn white in winter and brown in summer. The rock ptarmigan is a small bird that undergoes this transformation completely. Its white winter plumage blends with snow, while its mottled brown summer plumage blends with tundra vegetation. The timing of these seasonal changes is controlled by daylight length, ensuring that the bird's appearance matches the landscape at the right time of year. This annual cycle of color change has been refined over many generations, with those birds whose timing and coloration were most accurate leaving more offspring. Some animals use their environment to help with camouflage. The decorator crab collects bits of sponge, algae, and other materials from its surroundings, attaches them to its shell. The crab actively selects items that match the local environment, creating a custom disguise. If moved to a different environment with different materials available, the crab will remove the old decorations and replace them with new ones that fit the new setting. This behavior allows the crab to adjust its appearance throughout its life, and the instinct to decorate in this way emerged gradually as those crabs who decorated themselves more effectively had better survival. In forests around the world, moths have evolved patterns that help them rest safely on trees. The peppered moth is particularly well studied. In areas where tree bark is light-colored and covered with lichen, light-colored moths with delicate speckles blend in beautifully. In areas where pollution has darkened the bark and killed the lichen, darker moths are more common. This shift in the moth population has been observed in real time as industrial areas changed their tree bark colors. The moths themselves do not change color during their lifetimes, but the population shifts as different color forms have different survival rates in different environments. Many snakes have patterns that help them blend with their habitats. A forest snake might have blotches that resemble fallen leaves. A desert snake might be sandy-colored, with subtle markings that break up its outline on open ground. These patterns are not applied or learned. They grow as the snake develops, determined by inherited instructions that have been shaped over countless generations, by which snakes manage to move through their environments with the greatest success. Some creatures blend in so well that they seem to vanish against their background. The flounder, a flatfish, can adjust its color and pattern to match the seafloor where it lies. Specialized cells in its skin respond to what the fish's eyes see, creating a matching appearance. A flounder on sandy bottom becomes sandy, while one on gravel becomes mottled. The fish accomplishes this without thought or intention, through automatic processes that adjust its skin in response to visual input. This remarkable ability has developed gradually, as flounders with more responsive color-matching systems had greater success in both hiding from predators and surprising prey. In the treetops, many insects have evolved to resemble bark, leaves, or other plant parts with such precision that they become nearly invisible. The geometrid moth caterpillar extends its body at an angle from a branch, holding perfectly still, and looks exactly like a small twig. The resemblance includes correct coloring, appropriate texture, and even the right angle and size for the type of plant it lives on. This similarity is not coincidental. Over many generations, those caterpillars whose appearance and behavior created the best twig impression were most likely to survive, and their traits became more common in subsequent generations. Some fish have evolved transparent bodies, an extreme form of camouflage effective in open water. The glass catfish is almost completely see-through, with only its skeleton and a few internal organs visible. Light passes through the fish rather than bouncing off it, making the animal extremely difficult to spot in clear water. Transparency is particularly useful for small animals in environments where there is no background to match, and this solution to the challenge of being unseen has appeared in many different groups of ocean animals. The mimic octopus takes camouflage to an extraordinary level. It can change its color and texture to blend with the seafloor, but it can also alter its posture and movement to impersonate other animals. When threatened, it may shape its arms to look like the venomous lionfish, or flatten its body and arms to resemble a poisonous flatfish, or retreat into a hole with striped arms extended to resemble a venomous sea snake. These impersonations are not perfect imitations, but they are often effective enough to discourage predators. The ability to shift not just appearance, but also behavior, represents a complex adaptation that has been refined across many generations. In shallow waters, many animals have evolved to look like seaweed or other marine plants. The leafy sea dragon, a relative of the seahorse, has elaborate leaf-shaped appendages extending from its body. These appendages sway with the water movement, enhancing the resemblance to drifting vegetation. The animal moves slowly and carefully, maintaining the illusion. This extraordinary appearance developed gradually, as those individuals with more elaborate and leaf-like appendages were better hidden from predators and more successful in approaching their own prey. Many birds have plumage that matches their typical habitats. Ground-nesting birds like the nightjar are often patterned in browns, greys, and blacks that blend with dead leaves and bare soil. When a nightjar sits motionless on the ground during the day, it becomes extremely difficult to spot, even from just a few steps away. The bird's stillness is as important as its coloring. Together, appearance and behavior create effective concealment. These traits are passed from parent to offspring, and across many generations, they have been refined to produce the remarkably camouflaged birds we see today. In grasslands, many animals have evolved tawny or golden colors that blend with dry vegetation. Lions, though they are powerful predators, benefit from coloring that allows them to approach prey across open ground without being immediately obvious. The subtle tones of their fur help them appear as just another part of the landscape until they are close enough to chase. Even large animals gain advantages from blending in with their surroundings, and over many generations, those with better camouflage have passed these traits along. Some animals have patterns that are only visible under certain conditions. The owl butterfly has large eye spots on the underside of its wings, but when the wings are closed, only the upper side is visible, and that side is patterned like bark or a dead leaf. When the butterfly is at rest with wings closed, it blends into the forest. When startled and it flashes open its wings, the sudden appearance of large eyes can shock a predator and provide a moment for escape. This combination of camouflage and surprise has developed over time as an effective strategy for survival. In caves and deep ocean trenches, where light is absent or extremely dim, many animals have lost bright colors and patterns altogether. Cave fish are often pale or translucent, and many have lost their eyes entirely, since vision provides no benefit in complete darkness. These changes happened gradually over countless generations as animals adapted to environments where color and sight offered no advantage. The loss of unnecessary features is as much a part of adaptation as the development of new ones. The natural world is filled with examples of animals whose appearance matches their environment. Each case represents a long history of gradual adjustment, as small variations accumulated and were refined across generations. The moth on the bark, the lizard on the stone, the fish near the coral, each one carries in its body the history of its ancestors' interactions with their surroundings. These are not conscious designs, but the gentle outcome of time and circumstance, the slow sculpting of form to fit function, of appearance to match need. Every autumn, millions of monarch butterflies begin a journey that spans thousands of miles. These delicate creatures, weighing less than a single gram, travel from the northern United States and Canada all the way to specific mountains in central Mexico. The journey takes weeks, and the butterflies that make the trip have never been to Mexico before. They have never met the butterflies who made the journey in previous years. Yet somehow, they find their way to the exact same forests, sometimes even the same trees, where their great-grandparents spent the previous winter. This remarkable journey happens because of a series of inherited abilities that have been refined over many generations. The butterflies use the position of the sun in the sky as a compass, automatically adjusting for the sun's movement throughout the day, using a kind of internal clock located in their antennae. They can also sense the Earth's magnetic field, which provides additional information about direction. These navigational abilities are not learned. They are part of the butterfly's biological equipment, developed gradually over countless generations as those butterflies with better navigation had more success in reaching safe winter habitat. The timing of the migration is equally fascinating. Monarch butterflies that emerge in summer live for only a few weeks, reproducing quickly and producing the next generation. But the generation that emerges in late summer is different. These butterflies enter a state called diapause, where their reproductive systems remain immature. Instead of mating and laying eggs quickly, they conserve energy and prepare for the long journey south. This change happens automatically in response to shorter days and cooler temperatures. The ability to delay reproduction and focus on migration emerged gradually, as those butterflies who responded appropriately to seasonal signals were more likely to reach the winter habitat and survive to breed the following spring. During migration, monarchs travel in enormous groups, sometimes clustering together by the thousands at night. They rest in trees that provide shelter from wind and cold, often using the same roosting sites year after year. How these butterflies find the same trees used by previous generations remains partially mysterious, but it likely involves a combination of visual landmarks, wind patterns, and the same navigational cues used during flight. The trees themselves become known stopover sites, with multiple generations of butterflies recognizing them as good resting places. When the monarchs reach the mountain forests of Mexico, they cluster on oyamel fir trees in such dense numbers that the branches sag under their weight. The specific microclimate of these mountain forests, cool but not freezing, humid but not wet, provides ideal conditions for the butterflies to rest in a semi-dormant state throughout winter. They survive on stored fat, occasionally waking on warm days to drink water. The forests protect them from the extremes of weather that would be lethal in more exposed locations. In spring, as temperatures warm and days lengthen, the same butterflies that flew south become active again. Their reproductive systems mature, they mate, and then they begin flying north. These butterflies will not complete the entire return journey. Instead, they fly partway north to the southern United States, where they lay eggs on milkweed plants before dying. The next generation continues the journey north, and it will take 3 or 4 successive generations to reoccupy the full northern range. Each generation lives for just a few weeks during the summer, but the final generation of the year will be the one that makes the long journey south again. This complex life cycle, with its alternation between short-lived summer generations and the long-lived migrating generation, has developed over time as an effective strategy for surviving in environments that change dramatically with the seasons. The monarchs cannot survive the cold northern winters, so they must leave. But by returning north in spring, they can take advantage of abundant milkweed and relatively few competitors during the growing season. The ability to shift between different life strategies depending on the time of year represents a sophisticated adaptation to seasonal variation. Other animals also undertake long migrations. Arctic terns fly from pole to pole and back each year, covering more distance than any other animal. Caribou walk hundreds of miles across the tundra, following the same routes their ancestors walked. Salmon swim from the ocean back to the exact streams where they were born, sometimes traveling hundreds of miles upstream. Each of these migrations represents the outcome of many generations of refinement, as animals with better navigation, better timing, and better physical conditioning had more success in reaching destinations where conditions favored survival and reproduction. Migrations often follow patterns shaped by the landscape. Birds migrating across North America tend to funnel through certain valleys and along certain coastlines where food is available and weather is favorable. These routes are not randomly chosen. they reflect the accumulated experience of many generations, as birds whose roots happened to pass through more favorable areas had better success, and their descendants inherited the tendency to follow similar paths. In the ocean, sea turtles migrate thousands of miles between feeding grounds and nesting beaches. Female turtles return to the beaches where they themselves hatched, sometimes decades earlier. They navigate using a combination of cues, including the Earth's magnetic field, which they can sense with remarkable precision. This ability to detect and remember magnetic signatures allows turtles to find specific locations across vast, featureless ocean. The capacity to sense magnetism and use it for navigation has developed gradually over many generations, becoming a reliable system for finding important locations. Many migrations are timed to coincide with the availability of food. Birds that migrate north in spring arrive when insects are emerging and plants are producing new growth. Their timing is not arbitrary. It has been refined over many generations so that arrival coincides with peak food availability, giving the best chance for successful nesting and rearing of young. If conditions change, the timing of migration can shift gradually, as those individuals whose timing happens to match the new conditions have more success. Migrations are often multi-generational processes. Monarch butterflies, as mentioned, take several generations to complete their cycle. Some locusts also follow multi-generational patterns, with different generations occupying different habitats at different seasons. This distribution of a life cycle across multiple generations and multiple locations allows a species to utilize resources that are only temporarily available in any one place. The return migration often follows different routes than the outward migration. Many birds that migrate north in spring along the Atlantic coast of North America return south in autumn by flying over the interior of the continent. This loop pattern allows them to take advantage of different food sources and weather patterns at different times of year. The tendency to follow these different routes is inherited, shaped gradually as those birds whose routes provided better resources had more reproductive success. Some migrations have been disrupted by recent environmental changes. Birds that time their migration based on day length may arrive at nesting grounds to find that peak food availability has shifted due to warmer temperatures. Monarchs that migrate to Mexico may find fewer suitable forests due to habitat loss. These challenges are new, and populations must adjust. Sometimes adjustment happens behaviorally, as individuals respond to current conditions. Sometimes it requires many generations, as those individuals whose timing or routes happen to work better in new conditions gradually become more common in the population. The physiological changes animals undergo to prepare for migration are themselves fascinating adaptations. Many birds undergo a period of hyperphagia, eating intensely to build fat reserves that will fuel their journey. Their flight muscles enlarge. Their digestive organs may temporarily shrink to reduce weight, while organs needed for navigation remain active. These coordinated changes prepare the body for the demands of long-distance flight. The ability to undergo these transformations automatically at the right time of year has been refined over countless generations. In rivers, salmon undergo dramatic changes as they prepare to migrate from the ocean back to fresh water. Their bodies adapt to handle the different salt concentrations. Males develop hooked jaws and humped backs. Their color changes from silver to deep red or olive green. These transformations happen in response to hormonal signals triggered by changing day length and water temperature. The ability to undergo such complete physical restructuring represents a complex adaptation to life in two very different environments. The distances some animals travel are astonishing relative to their size. Ruby-throated hummingbirds, weighing just a few grams, fly non-stop across the Gulf of Mexico, a journey of over 500 miles. They accomplish this by storing enough fat to double their body weight before departure. Bar-tailed godwits fly from Alaska to New Zealand without stopping, over 7,000 miles of open ocean. These journeys push the limits of what seems physically possible. Yet the birds complete them successfully because their bodies are exquisitely adapted for efficient flight and energy conservation. Migration patterns often connect distant ecosystems in ways that are not immediately obvious. Nutrients are transported from one region to another as animals move. Salmon bring ocean nutrients back into streams and forests when they return to spawn. Their bodies, after spawning and dying, feed bears, eagles, and countless other animals, and nutrients from their remains fertilize riverside plants. Migrating birds connect Arctic tundra with tropical forests, carrying energy and nutrients between these distant regions. Places. These connections, developed through countless generations of animals following successful routes, create ecological links across the planet. Some animals have evolved to take advantage of migrations made by other species. Predators may gather along migration routes, knowing that prey will pass through at predictable times. Plants may time their flowering to coincide with the arrival of migrating pollinators. These relationships represent additional layers of adaptation, as species whose timing aligned with the migrations of others gained benefits and passed along the tendency toward that timing. The mystery of how animals navigate remains partly unsolved, even with considerable research. We know they use many cues such as the sun, stars, Earth's magnetic field, landmarks, and even smell. But how these pieces fit together in the animal's brain? How a bird integrates information from multiple sources to maintain a bearing over thousands of miles. How a butterfly, only a few weeks old, knows which direction to fly. These questions continue to invite exploration. What is clear is that navigational abilities have been refined over immense spans of time, shaped by the success or failure of countless journeys made by countless ancestors. These great journeys across continents and oceans remind us that life is not static, but flows across the landscape in response to changing seasons and changing resources. Migration is one of nature's most beautiful patterns, a rhythmic movement synchronized with the turning of the year, refined across generations until it becomes a reliable cycle that carries life from abundance to abundance, from safety to safety, through the vast and varied spaces of our world. Stand in a meadow today and return to the same spot in 100 years, and you might find a forest. Stand in that forest for another century, and the trees that shade the ground will be different species than those you see today. This slow transformation, where one community of plants gradually gives way to another, is called ecological succession. It is nature's way of healing and building, of transforming bare ground into complex ecosystems through a patient, step-by-step process. Succession often begins after a disturbance. A fire might sweep through a forest, clearing away trees but leaving soil behind. A field might be abandoned after years of farming. A landslide might expose bare rock on a mountainside. Each of these situations creates a blank or partially blank canvas, and life begins to fill it in, following predictable patterns that have repeated across the landscape for thousands of years. The first plants to arrive are often small, fast-growing species, sometimes called pioneers. After a fire, grasses and wildflowers may appear within a single growing season. their seeds blown in by wind or carried by animals. These pioneers have traits that help them thrive in open, harsh conditions. They can tolerate full sun, wide temperature swings, and poor soil. They grow quickly, reproduce abundantly, and spread their seeds far and wide. These traits allow them to colonize empty spaces before other plants can establish. As pioneer plants grow and eventually die, their remains begin to improve the soil. Dead leaves and stems decompose, adding organic matter. Roots hold soil in place, preventing erosion. Shade from the pioneer plants moderates temperature and humidity at ground level. Slowly, conditions change. The harsh, open environment becomes slightly more moderate, and this opens opportunities for other plants that could not have survived in the initial conditions. Next to arrive are typically shrubs and small, fast-growing trees. These plants need more resources than the pioneers, but they can grow in the partially improved conditions that pioneers have created. The shrubs and young trees grow taller than the grasses and wildflowers, shading them and eventually outcompeting them for light. As the shrubs dominate, the community shifts. Species that thrived in full sun decline, while species that can tolerate partial shade increase. The landscape changes from an open meadow to a shrubland. This process continues over decades. Small trees give way to larger trees. Fast-growing species like pines and birches, which need lots of light, dominate the young forest. But underneath these sun-loving trees, seedlings of other species begin to grow. Species like maples, oaks, and beeches that can tolerate shade when young. These shade-tolerant seedlings wait patiently under the canopy of the early trees. Eventually, the early trees reach old age and die. When a pine dies and falls, it creates a gap in the canopy. The young, shade-tolerant trees that have been growing slowly in the understory suddenly have more light available. They grow rapidly to fill the gap. Over time, as more and more of the early sun-loving trees are replaced by shade-tolerant species, the composition of the forest changes. What was once a pine forest becomes a mixed hardwood forest. This final stage, called a climax community, is relatively stable. The trees that dominate can regenerate in their own shade, so they tend to replace themselves when they die, rather than being replaced by different species. The timeline for succession varies depending on location and conditions. In a warm, wet climate with fertile soil, succession might move from bare ground to mature forest in less than a century. In harsher conditions, such as cold climates or poor soils, the same progression might take several centuries. On bare rock, where there is no soil at all, succession begins even more slowly, starting with lichens and mosses that can grow on stone and gradually break it down into soil particles. The stages of succession are not rigid or identical in every location. The specific species involved depend on what seeds are available, what the soil is like, what the climate allows, and what disturbances occur along the way. But the general pattern is remarkably consistent. Life moves from simple to complex, from fast-growing opportunists to long-lived specialists, from open, sun-tolerant communities to shaded, shade-tolerant communities. Each stage creates conditions that favor the next stage, like a slow chain reaction where each change enables the next change. Animals participate in succession as well. In early stages, when the landscape is open and covered with grasses and flowers, grasshoppers, ground-nesting birds, and animals like rabbits thrive. As shrubs take over, different birds that nest in bushes move in, and small mammals find shelter in the denser vegetation. When forest develops, squirrels, woodpeckers, and forest-dwelling songbirds become common. Each stage of succession provides habitat for a particular suite of animal species, and as the plant community changes, the animal community changes with it. Succession is not always a smooth, uninterrupted process. Disturbances can reset the clock. A fire might burn through a shrubland and return it to an early stage. A windstorm might knock down patches of forest, creating openings where early successional plants can re-establish. These disturbances are natural parts of the process, and many ecosystems experience them regularly. The result is often a mosaic landscape, where different areas are at different stages of succession, creating a variety of habitats in close proximity. Some plants have evolved traits specifically suited to life in early successional environments. Their seeds remain viable in the soil for years or even decades, waiting for a disturbance to create the open conditions they need. When fire or logging opens a gap, these dormant seeds germinate en masse, taking advantage of the temporary window of opportunity. Other plants have evolved for life in late successional forests, with seeds that germinate only in shade and seedlings that grow slowly but steadily in low-light conditions. Each strategy is an adaptation to a particular niche in the successional sequence. The concept of a climax community, a final, stable stage, is somewhat idealized. In reality, even mature forests are constantly changing. Individual trees die and are replaced. Wind, ice, disease, and insects create small gaps in the canopy. These small disturbances prevent the forest from ever being truly static. Instead, mature forests are best thought of as dynamic equilibria, where change continues, but the overall character of the forest remains relatively consistent over time. Understanding succession helps us understand how ecosystems recover from damage. An abandoned farm field does not need to be replanted to become forest again. If left alone, it will move through the predictable stages of succession, returning to forest within a human lifetime. This natural recovery is evidence of the inherent resilience built into ecosystems through countless generations of plants and animals adapting to disturbance and regeneration. Succession also occurs in aquatic environments. A pond slowly fills in with sediment and dead plant material. Aquatic plants grow in the shallows, and their remains accumulate on the pond bottom, making it shallower. As the pond becomes shallower, different plants can grow, and eventually the pond may transform into a marsh, then a wet meadow, and finally into dry land where succession continues as it would on any other patch of ground. This progression from open water to terrestrial habitat can take hundreds or thousands of years, but it follows patterns that have repeated countless times across the landscape. Coral reefs also undergo succession. After a disturbance like a severe storm or bleaching event, the reef begins to recover. Fast-growing algae and soft corals colonize first, much like pioneer plants on land. These are gradually replaced by slow-growing hard corals that build the reef structure. The full recovery of a reef can take decades, but the process follows a recognizable sequence of community changes. The quiet transformation of a meadow into a forest, of bare soil into a thriving ecosystem, reminds us that nature has its own pace. Change happens gradually, almost imperceptibly from day to day, but over years and decades, landscapes are transformed. Each stage prepares the ground for the next, and through this patient progression, complexity emerges from simplicity, diversity from uniformity, forests from fields. Many flowers bloom in colors that seem almost impossibly bright. The deep blue of a morning glory, the vivid orange of a poppy, the intense purple of a violet. These colors are not accidental. They serve a purpose, one that has been refined over countless generations through interactions between plants and the animals that visit them. The colors are signals, advertisements that help pollinators find flowers among the green foliage. Different pollinators are attracted to different colors. Bees, for example, see colors differently than humans do. They can perceive ultraviolet light, which is invisible to us, and many flowers have patterns visible in ultraviolet that guide bees to the nectar. A flower that looks uniformly yellow to human eyes might have ultraviolet patterns that create a bull's eye effect for a bee, pointing the way to the reward. These patterns developed gradually as those flowers whose markings most effectively attracted pollinators produced more seeds, and their descendants inherited similar patterns. Hummingbirds are particularly attracted to red flowers. Their vision is well suited to detect red hues, and many red flowers are tubular in shape, matching the length of a hummingbird's beak and tongue. This match between flower shape and bird anatomy did not arise by coincidence. Over many generations, those flowers whose shape and color were most effective at attracting hummingbirds received more visits, resulting in more pollination and more seeds. At the same time, hummingbirds with beaks, tongues well suited to extracting nectar from those flowers, had better access to food. The relationship developed together, each partner shaped by interaction with the other. Moths and other night-flying insects often visit flowers that are pale or white, colors that show up well in low light. Many such flowers also produce strong fragrances at night, providing another cue for nighttime pollinators. The timing of flower opening, the color of the petals, and the production of scent are all coordinated in ways that attract the right pollinators at the right time. This coordination emerged gradually as plants with more effective signaling had more reproductive success. Some flowers produce patterns called nectar guides, lines or dots that point toward the center of the flower where nectar is located. These guides help pollinators find the nectar quickly, and in the process of following the guides, the pollinator brushes against the flower's reproductive parts, picking up or depositing pollen. The guides are subtle, often visible only in ultraviolet light, but they make the pollinator's task easier and the pollination more efficient. Flowers also vary in shape in ways that match their pollinators. Long, tubular flowers are often visited by animals with long tongues, such as hummingbirds, butterflies, and certain moths. Flat, open flowers are accessible to many insects with shorter mouthparts. Some flowers have landing platforms that make it easy for heavy insects like bumblebees to land and feed. Each shape represents a match to particular visitors, a match that has been refined over many generations. The scent of flowers is another important signal. Pleasant fragrances that humans enjoy are often designed to attract bees and butterflies. But not all flower scents are pleasant to us. Some flowers smell like rotting meat because they are pollinated by flies that normally feed on carrion. These flowers have evolved not only the smell, but also colors and textures that mimic decaying flesh. The flies are fooled into visiting, and in the process, they transfer pollen. This remarkable mimicry developed gradually as those flowers that more effectively deceived flies had more reproductive success. Orchids are particularly famous for elaborate relationships with their pollinators. Some orchids produce flowers that look and smell like female insects. Male insects attempt to mate with the flower and in the process pick up pollen. Other orchids have complex shapes that force visiting insects to enter and exit in specific ways, ensuring that pollen is placed precisely on the insect's body where it will contact the next flower's reproductive parts. These intricate adaptations represent thousands of generations of interaction between flower and pollinator. The timing of flowering is itself an important adaptation. Plants that flower when their pollinators are most active and abundant have better chances of being pollinated. In temperate climates, Many plants flower in spring when bees are emerging and building their colonies. In tropical regions, some plants time their flowering to coincide with the migration of bats or birds that serve as pollinators. This synchronization between plant and pollinator emerged gradually as those individuals whose timing matched most closely had the greatest reproductive success. Some plants have evolved flowers that change color after being pollinated. A flower might be bright yellow when newly opened, then gradually fade to white after pollination. This color change signals to pollinators that the flower has already been visited and no longer offers a reward, encouraging pollinators to visit unpollinated flowers instead. This benefits the plant by ensuring that the pollinator's efforts are directed where they are most needed, and it emerged as those plants with color-changing flowers achieved better pollination efficiency. The variety of flower shapes, colors, and scents we see in nature reflects the variety of pollinators and the variety of environments where pollination occurs. A desert plant visited by bats might have pale, night-opening flowers with a musky scent. A rainforest plant visited by hummingbirds might have red, tubular flowers with no scent at all. An alpine meadow plant visited by flies might have small, dark flowers with a faint, fermenting smell. Each adaptation is a solution to the challenge of reproduction in a particular context, shaped by the animals available to serve as pollinators and the conditions under which pollination must occur. Pollinators also benefit from these relationships. Flowers provide food in the form of nectar, pollen, or both. Some insects feed exclusively on flowers and would not survive without them. The relationship between flowers and pollinators is mutually beneficial, with each partner gaining something essential. This kind of mutually beneficial interaction is common in nature, and it develops when changes that benefit both parties are preserved across generations. The colors and shapes of fruits are similar stories. Fruits are often brightly colored, red, orange, yellow, or purple, colors that stand out against green foliage and attract animals that eat fruit. When an animal eats a fruit, it often swallows the seeds, which pass through the animal's digestive system and are deposited elsewhere, sometimes far from the parent plant. This dispersal of seeds is beneficial to the plant, spreading offspring to new locations. The bright colors, sweet taste, and nutritious flesh of fruits are all adaptations that encourage animals to eat them. Those plants whose fruits were most attractive to animals had their seeds dispersed most widely, and over generations, fruit characteristics shifted toward forms that animals found irresistible. Some fruits are designed to be dispersed by specific animals. Large fruits with thick rinds may be adapted for dispersal by large mammals. Small berries may be adapted for birds. Fruits that float may be dispersed by water. Each type represents a solution to the challenge of moving seeds away from the parent plant, and the specific solution reflects the animals or forces available in that environment. The colors we see in flowers and fruits are the result of countless generations of interaction between plants and the animals that visit them. Each shade, each pattern, each scent represents a communication, a signal that says, "Here is food, here is the reward you seek." And in the exchange, plants achieve the movement of pollen or the dispersal of seeds that they need for reproduction. It is a quiet conversation conducted in color and scent and shape, refined over immense spans of time into systems that work with elegant efficiency. Some animals grow coats so thick they become living insulation. The musk ox, living in the Arctic, has a coat that includes both an outer layer of long guard hairs and an inner layer of incredibly soft, warm wool. This undercoat is so effective at trapping heat that musk oxen can survive temperatures that would be lethal to most other mammals. The ability to grow such an effective coat has developed over many generations in response to the extreme cold of their environment. In deserts, animals face the opposite challenge: excessive heat rather than excessive cold. Many desert animals are pale-colored, which helps reflect sunlight and stay cooler. They are often active at night and rest in burrows during the day. Some desert rodents have evolved kidneys so efficient at conserving water that they can survive without ever drinking, getting all necessary moisture from their food. These adaptations, from color to behavior to internal physiology, represent solutions to the challenge of surviving in extremely hot, dry conditions. Animals living at high altitudes, where oxygen is scarce, have evolved several adaptations to cope. Some have blood that carries oxygen more efficiently. Some have larger lungs or hearts. People who have lived in high-altitude regions for many generations often have adaptations such as increased lung capacity and more efficient oxygen use. These traits allow survival and activity at elevations where lowland-adapted individuals would struggle. In tropical rainforests, where competition for light is intense, many plants grow as vines, using other plants for support as they climb toward the canopy. Some plants have evolved enormous leaves to capture as much light as possible in the dim understory. Others have developed symbiotic relationships with fungi that help their roots absorb nutrients from the poor rainforest soil. Each adaptation represents a way of thriving in the specific conditions of the rainforest environment. Fish living in different water conditions show remarkable adaptations. Those in fast-flowing streams often have streamlined bodies and powerful fins to maintain position against the current. Those in still water may have deeper bodies and different fin shapes suited to maneuvering in place rather than swimming against flow. Fish in murky water may have developed enhanced senses of smell or touch to compensate for poor visibility. Each body form, each sensory system, reflects the particular challenges of the fish's environment. Birds have evolved wings suited to their lifestyles. Hawks and eagles have broad wings good for soaring on thermal currents, allowing them to search for prey while expending little energy. Hummingbirds have short, rapidly beating wings that allow them to hover while feeding from flowers. Penguins have wings that have evolved into flippers, useless for flight but excellent for swimming underwater. Each wing form is a solution to the particular way that bird species makes its living. The different types of beaks in birds similarly reflect different diets. Finches that crack seeds have short, powerful beaks. Hummingbirds that drink nectar have long, slender beaks. Woodpeckers that excavate insects from bark have straight, chisel-like beaks. Each beak form is well suited to a particular way of obtaining food, and these forms have been refined over countless generations, as those birds whose beak shapes most efficiently exploited available food sources had better survival and more offspring. In the ocean, whales and dolphins are mammals that have returned to aquatic life. Their bodies have become streamlined like fish, though they remain warm-blooded, air-breathing mammals. Their front limbs have evolved into flippers, and they have developed powerful tail flukes for propulsion. Inside their flippers, the bones still show the same basic structure as a human hand, evidence of their mammalian ancestry, but the external form has been reshaped for swimming. This transformation did not happen quickly. It required many generations of gradual change as individuals with slightly more aquatic adaptations had increasing success in the water. Bears living in different environments show different adaptations. Polar bears have white fur for camouflage on snow and ice, small ears to minimize heat loss, and large paws that act like snowshoes. Brown bears living in temperate forests have different coloration and behaviors suited to their environment. The differences between bear species reflect adaptation to their particular habitats, developed over many generations of living in those places. Many deep-sea fish have evolved bioluminescence, the ability to produce light. In the permanent darkness of the deep ocean, light is a valuable resource for attracting mates, luring prey, or communicating. The ability to produce light has evolved independently in many different groups of deep-sea animals, a striking example of how similar environmental challenges can lead to similar solutions. Plants that grow in water-scarce deserts have evolved remarkable ways to conserve moisture. Cacti have transformed their leaves into spines, reducing the surface area from which water can evaporate. They conduct photosynthesis through their thick, waxy stems instead. Succulents store water in their fleshy leaves and stems, creating reservoirs that sustain them through long, dry periods. Some desert plants have roots that extend dozens of feet deep to reach underground water sources. Others have widespread shallow roots that quickly absorb water when rare rains occur. Each strategy represents a solution to the challenge of surviving where water is scarce, refined over countless generations. Animals in cold environments have evolved multiple ways to maintain body temperature. Thick fur or feathers provide insulation. Layers of fat beneath the skin trap heat. Some animals have compact body shapes with small ears and tails, reducing the surface area through which heat can escape. The Arctic hare has short ears, compared to its desert-dwelling relatives, a difference that helps it conserve warmth. These variations are not conscious choices, but the result of many generations living in particular climates, with those individuals whose body proportions helped them maintain temperature having better success. The diversity of life we see around us represents countless generations of adjustment to local conditions. Each species, each population, carries within it the history of its ancestors' interactions with their environment. The patterns are not random. They reflect the particular challenges of surviving and reproducing in particular places, the opportunities available, the other species present, all woven together through time into the remarkable variety of forms and behaviors that fill our world. In nature, many species have formed partnerships that benefit both participants. These cooperative relationships, called mutualism, are found everywhere, from coral reefs to forests to the soil beneath our feet. They remind us that life is not only about competition, but also about collaboration, about finding ways to help one another that allow both partners to thrive. One of the most beautiful examples of mutualism involves flowers and the animals that pollinate them. A bee visits a flower seeking nectar, a sweet liquid the flower produces. While drinking, the bee brushes against the flower's pollen-covered parts. When the bee visits the next flower, some of this pollen rubs off, enabling fertilization. The bee gets food, and the flower achieves reproduction. This exchange is so common we barely notice it, but it represents a remarkable coordination between plants and animals, refined over countless generations, as those flowers that produced better nectar and those bees that visited flowers more effectively both had greater success. Some pollination partnerships are highly specific. Certain orchids produce flowers shaped to fit only one kind of bee. The bee must enter the flower in a particular way to reach the nectar, and in doing so, it picks up pollen that is positioned precisely to contact the next flower's reproductive parts. This close match between flower shape and bee behavior did not arise instantly. It developed gradually as small changes in flower structure and small changes in bee behavior reinforced each other across many generations. Fig trees have an extraordinary partnership with tiny wasps. Each species of fig has its own species of wasp that pollinates it. The female wasp enters the fig through a small opening, losing her wings in the process. Inside, she lays her eggs and simultaneously pollinates the flowers. The wasp larvae develop inside the fig, and when they mature, they mate. The males die inside the fig, but the females emerge, collect pollen, and fly off to find another fig tree where they will repeat the cycle. The fig gets pollinated, and the wasp gets a safe place to reproduce. This intricate life cycle has been maintained for millions of years, with fig and wasp depending utterly upon each other. In the ocean, clownfish live among the tentacles of sea anemones. Most fish avoid anemones because their tentacles contain stinging cells that can paralyze prey. But clownfish have a special mucus coating that protects them from the stings. Safe among the tentacles, clownfish find shelter from predators. In return, the clownfish provide benefits to the anemone. They chase away butterfly fish that would eat the anemone's tentacles. Their swimming creates water movement that brings nutrients to the anemone. Their waste provides nutrients as well. Both partners benefit, and both have evolved in ways that make the partnership more effective. Cleaner fish run what could be called service stations on coral reefs. Larger fish visit specific locations where cleaner fish live and wait to be serviced. The cleaners swim over the larger fish, carefully removing parasites, dead skin, and debris from scales, gills, and even inside the mouth. The large fish benefit from having parasites removed, while the cleaner fish get an easy meal. This arrangement is so reliable that cleaner fish can swim directly into the mouths of predators without being eaten. The relationship works because it benefits both participants, and it has been maintained over countless generations. In forests, many trees have formed partnerships with fungi. The fungi grow among and around the tree roots, creating a vast underground network. This partnership, called mycorrhiza, is extremely common. The fungi help the tree absorb water and nutrients from the soil, especially phosphorus and nitrogen. In return, the tree provides the fungi with sugars produced during photosynthesis. Neither partner could thrive as well alone. Together, they access resources that would otherwise be unavailable. This relationship is so ancient and so beneficial that most plants on land participate in some form of mycorrhizal partnership. The underground fungal network does more than help individual trees. It connects multiple trees together, allowing them to share resources. A large tree with access to abundant sunlight can send sugars through the fungal network to a smaller tree growing in shade. Nutrients flow from one tree to another based on need. Some scientists describe this network as a kind of forest internet, a hidden web of communication and resource sharing that links the trees above into a cooperative community. This network has developed over countless generations, shaped by the benefits it provides to both trees and fungi. Ants and aphids have a fascinating relationship. Aphids are small insects that feed on plant sap. As they digest the sap, they excrete a sweet liquid called honeydew. Ants find this honeydew delicious and will actively tend aphid colonies, protecting them from predators and parasites. Some ants even move aphids to better feeding locations or take them into their nests at night for safekeeping. In return for this protection and care, the ants enjoy a steady supply of honeydew. Both species benefit, and both have evolved behaviors that make the partnership more effective. On African savannas, oxpecker birds spend their days perched on large mammals such as zebras, giraffes, and buffalo. The birds eat ticks, flies, and other parasites that live on the mammal's skin. They also eat wound tissue and scabs, which can be less beneficial for the mammal. The relationship is complex, providing clear benefits in parasite removal, while also having potentially harmful aspects. Yet it persists because overall, both participants gain more than they lose. The birds get food, and the mammals get relief from parasites. In shallow tropical waters, coral reefs are built through a partnership between coral animals and microscopic algae called zooxanthellae. The algae live inside the coral's tissues, protected from predators and exposed to sunlight. They photosynthesize, producing sugars that the coral absorbs. The coral provides the algae with nutrients from its waste and a safe place to live. This partnership is so essential that coral cannot build reefs without these algae. When stressed by warm water or pollution, coral sometimes expels its algae, a process called bleaching that can be fatal if the partnership is not restored. Some plants have formed partnerships with ants that are remarkably specialized. The bullhorn acacia tree has hollow thorns that serve as homes for acacia ants. The tree also produces special nutritious structures that the ants eat. In exchange, the ants vigorously defend the tree from anything that touches it, attacking herbivorous insects and even large animals. The ants also clear away competing plants from around the base of the tree. Both partners have evolved to depend on each other so completely that neither does well without the other. Certain birds have learned to follow honey badgers in Africa. When a honey badger tears open a beehive to reach the honey, it creates an opportunity for the birds to feed on bee larvae and wax. The birds may also guide badgers to hives they have found, but cannot open themselves. This partnership is less obligatory than some others, but it provides benefits to both participants when they work together. In the human body, trillions of bacteria live in our digestive system. Many of these bacteria help us digest food, produce vitamins, and protect against harmful microorganisms. We provide them with shelter and a constant supply of nutrients. This internal partnership is essential for our health. Without these beneficial bacteria, our digestion and immune function would be severely compromised. The relationship developed over countless generations as humans and bacteria coexisted, with those bacteria that provided the greatest benefits thriving in their human hosts. Some animals have formed partnerships with plants for seed dispersal. Fruit-eating birds swallow fruits whole, digest the flesh, and later excrete the seeds, often far from the parent plant. This disperses the plant's offspring to new locations where they might find favorable conditions. The birds get nutrition from the fruit, and the plant gets its seeds distributed. Both have evolved in ways that enhance the partnership. Fruits become colorful and nutritious, attracting birds. Birds develop digestive systems that can handle seeds without destroying them. Lichens are actually partnerships between fungi and algae or bacteria. The fungus provides structure and protection, while the photosynthetic partner produces food through sunlight. Together, they can colonize bare rock, tree bark, and other harsh environments where neither could survive alone. Lichens are among the oldest and most successful partnerships in nature, found from Arctic tundra to tropical rainforests, demonstrating that cooperation can be a powerful strategy for survival. In the soil, legume plants such as beans, peas, and clover have formed partnerships with nitrogen-fixing bacteria. These bacteria live in special nodules on the plant's roots. They take nitrogen from the air and convert it into a form the plant can use, a process the plant cannot perform on its own. In return, the plant provides the bacteria with sugars and a protected environment. This partnership enriches the soil with nitrogen, benefiting not only the legume, but also other plants growing nearby. In Madagascar, lemurs and certain flowering trees have an important partnership. The lemurs feed on the tree's nectar, and in the process, they transfer pollen from flower to flower. Some flowers have evolved shapes that match the lemur's face, ensuring effective pollen transfer. The partnership demonstrates that pollination services can be provided by mammals as well as insects, and that each partnership has its own unique characteristics, shaped by the specific partners involved. These partnerships remind us that success in nature often comes not through isolation, but through connection. Species that find ways to help one another can both thrive, and these cooperative relationships have shaped life's history as much as competition has. Partnerships develop gradually, often beginning as casual interactions that become more coordinated and more beneficial over many generations. What starts as an occasional visit can become an essential relationship that neither partner can live without. The web of life is woven with countless such connections, visible and invisible, connecting species in relationships of mutual benefit that have been tested and refined across vast spans of time. These partnerships add layers of complexity to ecosystems, creating resilience and abundance that benefits not just the two partners, but the broader community of life around them. Living things show remarkable similarity beneath their surface differences. A human hand, a bat's wing, a whale's flipper, and a bird's wing might look very different, but their underlying bone structure is remarkably similar. Each has the same basic pattern of bones arranged in the same order, just modified for different purposes. This similarity suggests a shared ancestry, a common starting point from which different forms have developed over time. The genetic material that carries instructions for building living organisms shows even more dramatic similarities. All life on Earth uses the same basic genetic code, the same system for storing and copying information. Human DNA is chemically identical to the DNA of bacteria, trees, fish, and every other living thing. We all use the same 4 chemical letters to write our genetic instructions. This universal genetic language is powerful evidence that all life is related, descended from common ancestors that lived long ago. When scientists compare the DNA sequences of different species, they find patterns of similarity that match predictions based on physical features and fossils. Species that look similar generally have similar DNA. Species that look very different have more differences in their DNA. But even very different species share large amounts of genetic material. Humans share about half of their DNA with bananas, not because we are half banana, but because both humans and bananas need genes for basic cellular functions. And those fundamental processes have been conserved across the billions of years since our lineages diverged. The human genome contains many stretches of DNA that no longer function, but still carry the signatures of ancient genes. These are sometimes called genetic fossils, remnants of our evolutionary past. Some are broken copies of genes that worked in our ancestors, but are no longer needed. Others are viral sequences that inserted themselves into our ancestors' genomes and were passed down through generations. These genetic fossils provide a kind of molecular history book, recording events that happened millions of years ago. Some genes are shared across such vast distances of relationship that they are clearly ancient. The genes that control eye development in insects are similar to those that control eye development in mammals, even though insect eyes and mammal eyes are structured very differently. This suggests that the genetic tools for building light-detecting organs are ancient, present in a common ancestor, and have been modified in different ways in different lineages. Embryos of very different animals often look surprisingly similar in their early stages of development. Fish, bird, and mammal embryos all pass through stages where they have structures resembling gill slits, even though adult mammals and birds do not breathe through gills. These developmental similarities suggest shared ancestry, and reveal how new forms can emerge through modifications to existing developmental programs, rather than through entirely new creations. The arrangement of continents provides clues to the history of life. Species that now live on different continents are sometimes more closely related to each other than to nearby species. This makes sense when we remember that continents have moved over time. Populations that were once connected became separated as land masses split apart, and those separated populations then changed in different ways over millions of years, becoming distinct species while still retaining signs of their shared origin. Fossils preserved in rock layers provide direct evidence of past life. By examining fossils in sequence from older to younger rock layers, scientists can observe how life has changed through time. Simple organisms appear in the oldest rocks. More complex forms appear later. The fossil record shows a general progression from simple to complex, from sea-dwelling to land-dwelling, from early forms to the diverse array we see today. No fossils are found out of order. There are no rabbits in rocks from before mammals evolved, no flowers before plants colonized land. Some fossils show intermediate characteristics between major groups. Tiktaalik, for example, is a fossil fish with features that are part fish and part amphibian. It has fins with bone structures that could support weight, suggesting it could push itself up on shallow bottoms or even venture briefly onto land. It lived at a time when the first vertebrates were transitioning from water to land. Such fossils demonstrate that major transitions did not happen suddenly, but gradually, with many intermediate forms showing mixtures of features. The distribution of species across the planet makes more sense when viewed through the lens of change over time. Islands often have unique species found nowhere else, but those species are similar to species on the nearest mainland. This pattern suggests that occasional colonists from the mainland reached the islands and then changed over time in their new isolated environment, developing into distinct species. If each species were created independently, there would be no reason for island species to resemble mainland species more than they resemble species from other distant islands. Vestigial structures are features that no longer serve their original purpose, but remain as remnants from ancestors. Whales have tiny hip bones buried in their bodies, remnants from ancestors that walked on land. Some snakes have remnants of leg bones. Cave fish that live in complete darkness often have remnant eye structures beneath their skin. These features make sense as inheritances from ancestors that had functional versions, but do not make sense as original design for organisms that do not use them. The presence of similar structures serving different functions in different species suggests modification of existing forms rather than creation of new ones from scratch. The bones of a human arm, used for manipulating objects, are the same basic bones as those in a bat's wing, used for flying, and a dolphin's flipper, used for swimming. The same raw materials have been reshaped for different purposes, like taking the same set of building blocks and constructing different structures. These patterns of similarity and relatedness span all of life. The chemicals in living cells, the genetic code, the basic cellular machinery, the fundamental developmental processes, all show deep connections linking all living things. These connections suggest a branching tree of life, with all species connected through ancestry, each lineage carrying forward the inheritance of those who came before, while also accumulating its own modifications. The picture that emerges is one of continuity and change. Life has been present on Earth for billions of years, passing genetic information from generation to generation with remarkable fidelity, yet also accumulating changes gradually over time. The changes are usually small from parent to offspring, but they accumulate. Over many generations, the cumulative effect of these changes can be substantial, producing new forms, new species, new ways of living. Understanding these connections helps us see ourselves as part of a greater whole, not separate from nature, but deeply embedded within it. We share ancestors with every living thing, our history intertwined with theirs, our present existence made possible by the same processes that have shaped all life. This perspective invites humility and wonder, recognizing that we are participants in an ancient story that began long before humans appeared and will continue long after we are gone. The process of change in living populations is both simple and profound. It requires only a few basic ingredients: variation within populations, inheritance of traits, and differential success. From these simple elements emerges the rich diversity of life we see around us, shaped gradually over countless generations. Within any population, individuals vary. No two are exactly alike, except for identical twins or clones. These differences are not arbitrary. They often have genetic bases and can be passed from parents to offspring. A plant might vary in flower color, leaf shape, or root depth. An animal might vary in size, speed, or coat thickness. Variations provide the raw material for change. Different variations affect an individual's success in different ways. A thicker coat is beneficial in cold climates, but may be disadvantageous in warm ones. Longer roots are helpful in dry soil, but unnecessary in wet soil. Being fast is useful when escaping predators, but requires more energy. The same trait can be beneficial, neutral, or harmful depending on circumstances. The environment acts as a filter, with different traits affecting success differently in different contexts. Those individuals whose traits happen to fit their environment well tend to survive longer and reproduce more. Their offspring inherit those beneficial traits, making those traits more common in the next generation. Over many generations, this gradual shift accumulates. What begins as a slight advantage becomes more pronounced. Populations change, becoming better matched to their circumstances. This process has no direction or goal. It does not aim toward anything. It simply responds to current conditions. If conditions change, the traits that are favored change as well. A population living in a cooling climate might gradually develop thicker fur, as those individuals with slightly thicker fur have more offspring. If the climate then warms, the population might gradually develop thinner fur again, as thin-furred individuals have more success. Change can happen quickly or slowly, depending on several factors. In organisms that reproduce rapidly, such as bacteria or insects, change can be observed over just a few generations. In organisms that reproduce slowly, such as elephants or trees, the same amount of change might take thousands of years. The rate also depends on how strong the selective pressure is. A dramatic environmental change might favor certain traits very strongly, producing rapid change. Gradual environmental change might produce slow, barely noticeable shifts. Small populations can change more quickly than large ones through a process called genetic variation. In a small population, random events can significantly affect which individuals reproduce. A storm might kill certain individuals by chance, not because they had inferior traits. This randomness can cause trait frequencies to change even without any selective advantage. In large populations, random effects tend to average out, and change is more consistently driven by which traits provide advantages. Geographic separation often leads to the development of distinct populations. If a population is divided, perhaps by a rising mountain range or a widening river, the two separated groups experience different conditions. They may face different predators, different climate, different food sources. Over many generations of separation, each group changes in response to its own particular circumstances. Eventually, the populations may become so different that they are considered separate species, unable to interbreed even if brought back together. Fossil record shows many examples of transitions, where one form gradually gave way to another. Horse fossils, for example, show a progression from small, multi-toed animals to the large, single-toed horses we know today. The change was not linear or simple, but the overall pattern shows gradual modification over millions of years, with intermediate forms bridging the gap between ancient and modern horses. Islands provide particularly clear examples of how populations change when isolated. The Galapagos Islands, visited by Charles Darwin, host finches that are clearly related to South American finches, but have developed different beak shapes and sizes on different islands. Each island has different food sources, and the finches on each island have beaks suited to their local foods. Some have thick beaks for cracking seeds, others have slender beaks for catching insects. Still others have specialized beaks for extracting nectar from flowers. These differences developed over many generations as each island population adapted to its particular resources. In caves, many species have evolved in similar ways. Cave-dwelling fish, insects, and salamanders often lose their eyes and pigmentation. This is not because these features are actively harmful in caves, but because maintaining eyes and producing pigment require energy. In the darkness of caves, eyes provide no benefit, so individuals that happen to have smaller eyes or less pigmentation save energy and may have a slight advantage. Over many generations, cave populations shift toward eyeless, pale forms. This same pattern has occurred independently in many different cave systems, demonstrating that similar conditions tend to produce similar outcomes. Antibiotic resistance in bacteria is a contemporary example of change happening in real time. When antibiotics are used, they kill most bacteria in a population. But if a few bacteria happen to have genetic variations that make them less susceptible to the antibiotic, those few survive. They reproduce, passing on their resistance. After several generations, the entire bacterial population may be resistant to that antibiotic. This is not because the bacteria wanted to become resistant or tried to adapt. It happened because the antibiotic created an environment where resistance was strongly favored, and the population changed in response. Similar processes occur in agriculture. When pesticides are applied to crops, most pest insects die, but a few with resistance survive. Those survivors reproduce, and over several generations, the pest population becomes predominantly resistant. Farmers then need to use different pesticides or strategies, and the cycle may repeat. This is observed regularly and demonstrates that populations can change significantly, even within human lifetimes, when selective pressures are strong. The process by which populations become better suited to their environments is sometimes called natural selection, a term that emphasizes that the environment acts as a filter, selecting which traits are passed on through differential survival and reproduction. It is not active selection like a gardener choosing which seeds to plant, but passive selection through consequences of traits in particular environments. Change happens because the world is not static. Climates shift. Predators appear or disappear. Food sources vary. Sea levels rise and fall. Every environmental change creates new challenges and new opportunities. Populations are constantly responding to these changes, tracking their environments through shifts in trait frequencies across generations. This responsive relationship between populations and environments has been ongoing for billions of years, producing the remarkable fit between organisms and their habitats that we observe today. Understanding how populations change helps explain both the similarities and differences we see in nature. All life shares common ancestry, which explains the fundamental similarities. But different lineages have experienced different conditions for vast spans of time, accumulating different changes, producing different forms. The tree of life has many branches, each following its own path through time, each carrying forward its inheritance while also recording its own history of change. The evening deepens now, and we have traveled far together, through patterns of color and shape, through migrations and transformations, through partnerships and connections. We have seen how living things respond to their surroundings, how small changes accumulate, how time weaves variation into diversity. The natural world is not chaotic but patterned, not random but responsive, filled with relationships that have been tested and refined across countless generations. Consider for a moment the butterfly resting on bark, invisible to passing birds. Its pattern did not appear suddenly. It emerged gradually, refined through many lifetimes, each generation slightly better hidden than the last. The monarch butterfly knows nothing of Mexico, yet it flies thousands of miles to forests it has never seen. This ability arose slowly, accumulated across ages, tested each year against the challenges of survival. The forest that grows where a field once stood did not spring up overnight. It began with small pioneers, grass and flowers that prepared the ground. Decades passed as shrubs took root, centuries as trees reached skyward, each stage creating conditions for the next, each species part of a larger progression that transforms bare earth into living complexity. The bee visiting the flower performs an ancient exchange refined over millions of years. The flower offers nectar, and in return, pollen moves from bloom to bloom. Neither bee nor flower understands the partnership, but it works because it has worked for countless generations before them, each slight improvement making both partners more successful. Deep in the soil, fungi connect trees in a hidden network, sharing resources, supporting one another. This underground web sustains forests in ways we are only beginning to understand. It developed slowly, as tree roots and fungal threads found mutual benefit, as cooperation proved as valuable as competition in the complex web of life. All these patterns, all these relationships, are evidence of something profound and beautiful. Life adjusts to its surroundings. It responds to challenges. It finds solutions through the patient process of time and change. What we see today is not fixed or final, but a current snapshot of an ongoing journey that stretches back to the earliest days of life on Earth and continues forward into a future we cannot see. You are part of this story. The atoms in your body were forged in ancient stars. The cells that build you operate through processes refined over billions of years. The very structure of your hands reflects an ancient pattern shared with countless creatures across time. You breathe air enriched by plants. You are nourished by food from organisms shaped by the same forces that shaped everything alive. This perspective can bring comfort. You are not separate from nature, but woven into it. Your existence is made possible by uncountable generations of life that came before, each one surviving long enough to pass along the gift of existence to the next. You are the latest link in an unbroken chain that extends back through time beyond imagining. Tonight, as you rest, know that the world continues its slow, patient turning. Caterpillars are becoming butterflies. Seeds are germinating in forest floors. Birds are finding their way along ancient migration routes. Trees are sharing resources through underground networks. The ocean tides are rising and falling in rhythms older than mountains. Life is adjusting, responding, continuing. These processes require no urgency. They unfold at their own pace, unhurried, steady, as reliable as sunrise. The tree adds one more ring of growth each year. The mountain wears away, grain by grain. The river carves its valley in slow persistence. Time is long, and change is gradual, and there is room for everything to unfold as it will. You need not hurry or strive tonight. Simply rest in the knowledge that you are held within these larger patterns, part of a living world that has endured through unimaginable spans of time and will continue long after this moment has passed. The story is vast, but your place in it is real and valuable. You are here, alive, aware, connected to everything that has come before and everything that will follow. Let yourself settle like leaves falling gently to forest floor, like sand grains on a quiet beach, like stars in their slow wheel across the night sky. The processes that shaped the world are patient. They ask nothing of you tonight except to rest, to let go, to simply be. The butterfly will find its way. The forest will continue its slow transformation. The flowers will bloom in their season. The rivers will flow to the sea. And you, dear listener, can release the day and drift into peaceful sleep, knowing you are part of something ancient, beautiful, and ongoing. Breathe slowly. Feel your body growing heavy and warm. The world turns without your effort. Life continues its gentle work of growth and change. You have done enough for today. You are enough, exactly as you are in this moment. Close your eyes now. Let thoughts dissolve like morning mist. Let concerns fade like stars at dawn. Sleep comes like a tide, natural and inevitable, and there is nothing you need to do but allow it. Rest now. Dream of quiet meadows and patient forests. Dream of butterflies on the wing and rivers flowing to the sea. Dream of the long, slow dance of life on earth, beautiful and unhurried, stretching backward through time and forward into mystery. You are safe. You are part of this. You can rest. Good night.